On tonight's program, we tackle the thorny subject of fleet marks.
Okay, then put those in somewhere else that makes sense, like PvP.
We share our top asset requests.
Well, I can narrow that one down.
And we talk about time traveling back to your very first mission.
It's like looking at the drawings I made with crayons as a child.
Yeah.
Join us for the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast dedicated to the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is a man who recently ranked 47th for the job of Pope, Hippiejohn.
47th.
I thought that was a good ranking.
Pope? It's hard to become Pope when you're an atheist.
Well, someone will tell them that eventually. And we also have with us the Vice Admiral in charge of solid waste disposal, Greendragoon.
Oh, I got a promotion.
Yes.
Hello.
And we were set to have a couple of guests tonight, but things fell through, so it is just the three of us, and hopefully we'll have Markhawkman later. So we begin tonight by saying that we had a really excellent response to last week's episode. Our very first, we had lots of great comments, support from all the other podcasts, and goes to show what a great community we have here. And in fact, there's Markhawkman now.
Hey, look at that.
So we'll add him into the Skype call.
Add him into the conversation.
And here he is, everyone, our trained Horda, Markhawkman. All right. Well, let's get started here. Obviously, we have big news just today. They have announced a new reward scheme for the Foundry, which will reward people proportionate to reward in dilithium, I should say, proportionate to the average length of the mission, as long as your mission already makes that qualifier. So, I think we all kind of like that. At least all the authors, I should say.
Yes, and I mean, I don't think it goes far enough. But in terms of they need to replace those fleet marks somewhere.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is they removed fleet marks from it altogether. Or I should say, these are on Tribble.
Yes, these changes are on Tribble, so there's, we should talk, like, this is the time that people should talk about it, and I'm sure there's going to be people raging about it too, but this is the time that people should, give some constructive feedback and say, well, if you're intent on getting rid of the fleet marks from this particular thing and getting rid of the entire wrapper idea with it, okay, then put those in somewhere else that makes sense, like PvP. Put them in more into the actual fleet actions.
And that's pretty much what people have been saying, is that, if they are going to take this out from here, we need it somewhere else. And I even commented in the thread that, they ought to add it to PvP, because that is group content.
Yeah. I was actually just looking at the thread a little while ago, and yeah, some of the people have gone into full nerd rage on there. One thing to remember from past Tribble updates, though, is that while they often put things on Tribble, then bring them to the live server a week later, they don't always. Sometimes when they put things on Tribble, they change it before they bring it to the live server. So when we see it on the live server, we might actually get a version that has scaled fleet marks.
See, I don't know that scaled fleet marks is the answer. I think fleet marks for actual fleet content is the answer.
Well, yes, that's good too.
And that does seem to be what they were saying, or at least what Brandflakes was saying, is that they wanted the fleet marks to come from group content.
It makes sense.
Sure, but I think they're running into this thing where this reward has been there for so long, and of course, as we know, it's become a fairly easy thing to get and to repeat. It's been there for so long that people are used to it. They think it's, that's part of the game.
In all fairness, there's rage every time they make a change like this, and usually, it'll blow over after a while, and people get used to it, and it's kind of par for the course.
Yeah, it's completely par for the course. It doesn't matter what system in game they change. If it's an STF change, if it's a PvP change, if it's a Foundry change, there's going to be rage about it.
So, yeah, we're back into completely normal territory.
Yep. But I think, hey, it's a fair opinion for people to say, look, fleet marks are a necessary commodity. It's just the truth in the way that they've set up the game. Although it's
necessary depending on the way you choose to play.
Exactly. I was going to say, although for me, I don't personally ascribe to any of the grind. In the entire fleet system, there's one thing that I actually want. And that's the costume, the uniform. Yeah. That's it.
The same for me, and I already got it, so.
Right. So I don't ascribe to the whole grinding mentality. I play the game because the game is fun. Sometimes I play story. Sometimes I play STF. It's just, sometimes I play a PvP match because that's what's fun at the time.
Yeah, unlike a lot of people, I have 9 characters that I actually play as 9 characters. I don't just use them for grinding.
It's I guess what it is instead of grinding, the way I see it is the content will always be there. I do understand though, they've dangled a really big shiny in front of people, the Starbase, and, a lot of people have just gone for it, and now that they're committed, any change to their way of progressing in it is going to bring about stress and I have to complain and yell and I get it. I totally understand where they're coming from. And the point is, to me, that they should realize that Cryptic should realize they've set up a system that requires this currency. And they need to put it in the game in a way that's available to people.
Yeah, it makes sort of, no, never mind to me whether it's there or not, but I think they should probably put it back. That's just my
fine by me. I wouldn't.
It's fine either way.
Yeah, it'd be fine by me.
I do like the scaling method because suddenly this becomes a huge boon for the longer missions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But at the same time, while still not forcing anybody to play a 2-hour mission, of which there really aren't that many.
I wrote one.
Because you can just, play a succession of shorter missions for the same effect.
Exactly.
Actually, that was part of the issue with why the fleet mark thing was such a big deal, is that you would get the 50 fleet marks regardless of what mission you did, which is why people started doing that with the Foundry in the first place. So, changing it to scale so that you get time, or you get something based on the time spent, was probably what their in-game plan was for the Foundry reward changes from the start, and they just hadn't quite finished it yet.
And I think that's something that we heard from D-Stall when he was interviewed by Primetime UGC, is that we'd be getting some sort of newer proportion system. I think he might have said in January, but here it is, February. It's a little delayed, but it's cool.
Hey, so
anyway.
Yeah. So what else we got to talk about?
Moving on. Let's go to the "What are you working on?" section.
So there we go.
Let's start with you, Hippie.
Oh, okay. Start with me. Let's see. What have I been working on this week? I finally figured out how to send someone to multiple cryptic maps, to multiple interacts, and multiple multiple contacts to talk to, and what I've been working on since I accomplished that and figured out how to make it happen was running around the cryptic maps, checking out all of the NPCs and all of the different places that people can interact, because I have this idea for an investigation, kind of an across the galaxy investigation that leads to a custom map. So I've been looking a lot at that, and I've also been, I've had 2 missions open that I guess I would call older missions, really taking a lot of the feedback that I hear from reviews of the Spotlight mission and taking that into account, and really started editing and working on a KDF version of the mission, because if it's based on a featured episode series, there's always been a Federation and a Klingon version, so I want mine to have both as well. And I'm also working on reworking stuff in the first mission that I ever made.
So how is that, going back to your very first mission and trying to take a look at it, figure out what to redo?
It's like looking at the drawings I made with crayons as a child.
Yeah.
Because literally I made the mission in 2 days when I made it the very first time. Kirkfat I saw Kirkfat's contest and went, wow, I have a story. I only have 2 days to figure out both how to use this Foundry thing and actually do it. So it's incredibly simple. It's just like here, and hopefully the story was something people wanted to read. It knew nothing about triggers or branching dialogue or any of the real basics, even like the states of objects, making things able to appear and disappear. So it's really just like looking at something that for me was really primitive, looking at it now, and I'm only a couple of months later. These are just the things that I've learned in a couple of months. I can't wait until I know more.
Must be a fast learner.
Oh, me, I have noticed in some of my older stuff that I put in a bunch of horribly overcomplicated ideas that I either took out later, or in the case of the first mission I ever did, I simply never bothered publishing the mission in the first place, because I realized that other than me, nobody was ever going to be able to actually figure out how to get the mission to work right. The first mission was called Treasure Hunt with Teddy, not just Treasure Hunt. It actually required you to do something that was very similar to free climbing a rock face. It was cool. The closest I've ever been able to figure out a way to do that in Star Trek Online. The catch is that what I came up with makes accolade hunting on Malrihan look easy, because you're literally on this side of a giant stone thing, and if you move in the wrong direction, you'll fall off and have to start all over again.
That actually sounds pretty cool, I gotta say.
I never published it just because of the fact that after doing a whole lot of work, several days, it was just too complicated, because the holes you needed to crawl through to get to places were just, kind of insane. I might publish it later, though. I don't know.
Well, let's move on to you then, Mark. What are you working on?
Still the Foundry Challenge thing. I've actually made a lot of progress on that one, and I know there's something very interesting about the crystal props that I've been using. A lot of them make noises. Like the crystal cave items, they actually have this musical chiming sound that you can hear whenever you're near them.
A musical chiming sound.
It's actually very cool.
All right, well, Greendragoon, what are you working on?
I haven't been able to do too much in the Foundry. I have this one map that is all custom, and it's my first like huge all custom map. But I am forever running against the detail limit, and so every time I add something in, I've got to knock something off or simplify something to try and make room.
See, that's funny because I've been building custom maps for years, never run into the detail limit. Not even back when it was 250.
This map is pretty large.
Well, I actually did run into it in the old days once, but that was when I was constructing this maze out of Borg junk that you had to, walk around on top of. I've actually, with the current Foundry Challenge missions, I'm actually building a complete starbase interior from scratch, and I haven't run into the detail limit yet. Maybe.
I did discover that you can do a select all on your objects and kind of get a rough estimate of how many detail or how many objects you're using.
Really,
that's very nice.
Is there like a little counter that says how many objects you have selected?
Yeah, it'll say like 293 selected.
Yeah.
Well, I never knew that.
Yeah, I have used that myself.
What I find useful about the multi-select is if you want to build several layers of the same objects going up vertically, you can select them, copy, and then change the Y value. It changes the Y value for all of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Well, I am ashamed to say I have gotten very, very little done on my Foundry Challenge mission this week. Just been a busy week, and lots of things going on in other games as well that I play. There was, it was patch day yesterday in the Old Republic, and they put in a new reputation system, which I must say I like much better than the Stowe reputation system. But that's neither here nor there. One thing I did work on this week is I started outlining a mission that I've been thinking about for a long time that I just never had gotten around to doing anything with. It's a sequel to my Mirror Universe mission, which is called Over There, which makes you go to the Mirror Universe. What the sequel is going to be, it's cleverly titled Over Here, which brings the villain from the first one is going to come and seek revenge on you and try and take down the entire Federation, of course. So it's going to be big, epic, lots of explosions. And I finally got around to outlining it. I suppose you could almost call it. It's very JJ Trek. I going back when I was first thinking about this, because I made the mission way back after the original mission, way back before the season 4 downtime. And I'd always thought about bringing that villain back, and I always thought about some cool, creepy monologue about how when the Federation is dead, then you have my permission to die. And then, of course, they did the same thing in almost the same line, word for word, that I was thinking of. They did it in the
Dark Knight.
Latest Batman movie.
Yeah.
So it'll be kind of like that. It'll be a little bit of Dark Knight Rises, a little bit of the new JJ Trek, with when you have a very singular villain that you're very focused on.
Heck, Zorbane's got a mission based on Iron Man.
It's a super fun mission too.
It is. It's a lot of in-jokes and lots of fun stuff. All right,
so
moving
Drogan,
on.
what have you played this week?
Moving on to what have we played? I played 2 missions. Actually, the first mission I played several weeks ago, and I had just forgotten the title of it before the last podcast. So I was going to mention it then, but I'll mention it now. It's called What's Done in Darkness by Brant Prees 08. And I'll make sure I spell that correctly in the show notes. It's all about Section 31, and you essentially get together with a group of various admirals and captains, all of whom have their own pasts and their own agendas, and you essentially launch an assault on a Section 31 outpost. And it's very well done, lots of very well thought out dialogue. But the only quibble I have with it, because the map design is very good, it's fairly basic, but very good. The only real quibble I have with it is the notion of Section 31, which I think a lot of people get wrong from my perspective, and I think even the shows got wrong. Because when I see a lot of people using Section 31, they use it in a way where this supposedly covert organization that nobody knows about is acting in a not very covert manner. They have their own warships that are openly attacking you. They have their own soldiers that are openly attacking you. Everybody knows who they are, knows what they're doing. So it's just, they don't act very secretive for a secret organization. And I kind of addressed this when I made one of my missions. Now, I won't tell you which one, because I like to have people try and figure this out on their own if they can, if it even occurs to them. But I put a Section 31 operative in it that you work with, that if you're not paying attention, if you don't suspect, you'll never know he was Section 31. I never tell you. I never come right out and tell you. But he is there.
That's the right way to do it. I don't know if I'm in 100% agreement, but that's completely true.
It's difficult. It's a difficult concept. This sort of nebulous organization that may or may not exist, nobody knows about, and it is very difficult to construct a mission around that.
But to me, that the idea of them is exactly what you just said: a nebulous organization that may or may not exist.
And more importantly, pretends that it doesn't exist.
And more importantly, pretends that it doesn't exist. So you could assume that they may or may not exist, and they are taking steps to try to keep this perception so, but yet the way that they're presented is more like the CIA.
Yeah.
We know that there are agents out there, and we know what Section 38, and it just, you're right, it feels wrong when it's presented that way.
So that's how I try and portray Starfleet intelligence, as more like the CIA. You know, they have covert ops out there, but I mean, you know that this organization exists. It's an official part of your government.
They have an office.
Yeah, they have office. They have a bunch of suits. They have an intelligence directorate that's just a bunch of analysts sitting at desks. But, Section 31 is like, a secret society that is actively trying to stay secret. So it's like, why do you know about these people? But, and I didn't mark him down for that, because I don't think you should really be marked down for that, because the shows did that too. And it's a very difficult concept to work
Didn't
with.
they have those two guys show up on Deep Space Nine who were... They had names that were anagrams of Mulder and Scully.
Oh, you're thinking of
Domer
Temporal
and Luxley.
Investigations.
Yeah, that was Temporal Investigations.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Deep Space Nine was where Section 31 was introduced, and they were trying to recruit Dr. Bashir, and they did it okay there, because it ended up being where only Dr. Bashir, Captain Sisko, and Admiral Ross were the only ones who ever knew about it. That's that one. So, What's Done in Darkness? It was one of these. I was trying to look for missions that were under 5 reviews. Last I looked, it had exactly 5 reviews. So, it's out there for everybody. I absolutely love the title, What's Done in Darkness. That's just a really cool title. And very fitting to dealing with Section 31. So I do recommend it. It's a wonderfully complex mission, and it's hopefully going to have a sequel. Because it does end on a cliffhanger. I like a good cliffhanger. Being a fan of Best of Both Worlds.
Have you played my mission yet?
No, I have not.
Oh.
And I never will, because I only play missions with the red text. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Well, if you like cliffhangers,
I do like a good cliffhanger. As long as I get part 2 eventually. That's the problem with some of these poor canceled TV shows, is you never get the resolution to the cliffhanger.
Oh yeah. Like Star Trek Enterprise.
The 4400 was the big one that I thought ended where it shouldn't have ended. Okay, the other mission I played was called An End to It Once and For All by Alphanx01. And this mission it was definitely a first-time author, and possibly someone whose first language wasn't English, because there was a lot of dropped articles like the and a missing out of the dialogue. It was another one where the author had obviously put a lot of thought into it. and is obviously a Star Trek fan, so I wouldn't mark him down for that. But it became too complicated and overblown for their own good. It seemed like an excuse to drop every single species of mob into a mission. Because it was ostensibly a sort of an alternate ending to the Star Trek Online plot where, you're a few years into the future, the Federation is winning the war, you're preparing for the final assault onto Kronos, which is a great concept. I like that concept. I think it's pretty cool. And, it kind of echoes the end of Deep Space Nine, where they're finally ready to assault Cardassia. But then a bunch of enemies show up that really have no place there. Like, for some reason you are allied with the Borg, even though they never show up in the mission. For some reason, the Klingons are allied with the Iconians, who, in this case, were played by the... he was using... the blue guys, the Phantom blue guys.
Davidians.
Davidians, thank you. He was using Davidians for them on the ground and Fakiri for them in the air. Which, I don't know. Obviously, we don't have Iconian mobs. You got to do something if you want them in there. But
right.
That just sort of took me out of it. And then the Romulans show up for no particular reason at the end. So I think the author would benefit from focusing on that original concept, I think. And if they wanted to bring these other races into it, make it into a series, make these separate episodes, and figure out a better way to work them into the plot. But I wanted to talk about this episode not because of its shortcomings, but because of one thing that the author did that I really loved. Okay, you're bringing in some allies, and there's always a possibility that they're going to get destroyed in the battle. This is in space. And what he did is he put in dialogue options for either eventuality. So there's one particular ship that you have met and talked to throughout the episode, and in the final battle, it's there fighting alongside you. It might get destroyed, it might not. So in the dialogue after the battle, he has an option. This says in parentheses, ship X ship has been destroyed. And another one that says X ship is still there. And you'll get different dialogue responses. And now I looked around and the ship had been destroyed, so that's the one I picked. Now I assume you would get different responses if you picked the one where the ship was still there. Obviously that ship's captain could then join in the conversation because he's not dead. But I really liked that, giving them the option, knowing that one of those two things would happen. It would either be there or wouldn't be there.
Right.
And that kind of solves the problem of how do you resolve a plot when you're not sure if every ship will survive.
That's really neat. I think I want to play this just to see how he did that.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I kind of want to add into my missions.
It sounds like it's a simple branched dialogue path, but one that creates an actual divergence in the story rather than just simply being two different ways of saying something.
Yeah, and allows you to respond to the random things that happen in game sometimes in a way that otherwise you really can't. Because we can't. One of the things I'd really like to do is be able to set a mob to be invincible, so that I could have, I could bring in an ally and always have them survive the battle. But obviously we can't do that now. This is a good workaround. You write out two plots based on whether they survive or whether they don't.
Well, there is actually a workaround for the allied thing, because you can have it so that the allied mob despawns after the battle and an NPC group spawns. But of course, there's always the possibility that they'll end up spawning in a radically different location.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
People will work around, why is it suddenly over there? So there's several workarounds, obviously, and we're kings of workarounds here. Okay, so moving on. Hippiejohn, what have you played?
I probably played baker's dozen of missions this week of a variety of different kinds. From missions that I expected to be, hey, this is a new way that people are exploiting the Foundry, just because, hey, it's at the top of the list. You know what? I make it a point to check out whatever's at the top of the list. Often, but that's not what I really, like I said, I played a baker's dozen, so I played a lot of story, and I also picked up one that we talked about last week with a couple of old friends, from the game from long ago. The one that we talked about last week called Space Race, which all I can say is if you really feel like getting that racing game feeling in Star Trek, that's exactly what it gave me, in Star Trek Online, and it was super fun. I can't say enough good about it.
I'm curious, what kind of ship did you try it with?
I took my Armitage in there, and I had my Borg engines on it, and I mean, I could see maybe enjoying it more in my shuttle. Honestly, if I can get everybody else, to go in shuttles, but we all just took in what we had. I could, but it was big enough that you could have that larger ship.
Yeah,
and it wasn't a problem.
Because I know in that video that they all did was just Jem'Hadar fighters. Of course, not everybody has those.
Right.
I tried it this week myself, and I did it in a Chimera, and I was racing against somebody who was flying an Odyssey.
Yeah, it's
I
big
really
enough.
hope you beat them badly.
No, because my issue is I wasn't sure exactly what the stupid Tholian mobs were for, so whenever I saw Tholians, I felt the need to stop and exterminate them. Apparently you weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah, they're kind of, I didn't expect them when my friends and I were running through it. It was just out of nowhere, all of a sudden, boom, Tholians, and it's kind of like, whoa, these are just other obstacles here in the race course, and they're obstacles that happen to shoot at me and slow me down from full impulse or whatever, but
tractor beam repeatedly.
What I can say is that it's exactly what it's described to be. It's a really fun, different way to PvP. It was really awesome. I could not imagine having any fun trying to do anything with it alone. It's just a big, race course. That said, for exactly what it's, advertised to be, it's awesome. I suggest anybody who wants to go race in STO, go do it. The other one that I want to talk about is because it's a similar, it occurs in my mind that I played a couple of missions that had a similar design. Because a race course built inside for your ships and everything. I also played Kirkfat's mission that doesn't have a lot of reviews yet. It's got a good, fair number. I don't have my window open right now to see how many. Trojan Horse, the infiltrate a Borg cube in your shuttle. That was really, really well done. I was super impressed with the maps and the getting to fly around in the maps. The only thing that I felt like I wanted more from it was I wanted more action, I guess is the way to put it. I wanted more things inside of that cube that I could pew at. There just wasn't enough to satisfy my bloodlust, I guess, or my Borg lust. I just wanted to shoot more Borgs, and that was, but otherwise, those were the most, I really felt like I was inside of a Borg cube flying in a shuttle. The maps were outstanding. 5 stars for the maps alone, even though, as I said last week, I don't really love the numerical rating in any way, shape, or form, but that was amazing for the maps alone. I think other people played some of the story missions and some of the missions that had a few less reviews that I also played during the week, so I'll let them talk about that one if they... that I think Dragoon there played the same one I did. He mentioned that before, so... Yeah, I wanted to just, focus on the two that were designed like interior, designs, and it's really, really inspiring to see how someone could use the Foundry to do that. It's not easy. It can't have been easy for either of them to do what they did. That's a lot of work. I can see how much went into both of them. So.
Well, great. All right. Greendragoon, how about you?
So I've actually got 2 missions I played. Both were below 5 reviews. The first one, the one Hippiejohn alluded to, is Return to Armageddon by Bluedarky. And this is I want to call like a classic Foundry mission. It is actually a follow-up to the TOS episode, A Taste of Armageddon. And for those of you who may have been a while since you watched it, A Taste of Armageddon is the one where the Enterprise comes in and finds this planet that's at war with its neighbor, except it's all simulated. And if, people are killed in this simulated war, they just march into this disintegration booth. Well, his mission is a present-day follow-up to that, and basically, you go to one of the planets, and ironically, from what I recall, you actually go to the opposite planet that the original episode took place on, and they've re-picked up this war. And so you're trying to kind of subdue things and negotiate. You bring an ambassador who's a descendant of the ambassador from the first mission to try and calm things down, and you're basically trying to figure out what's going on and then kind of subdue them, because they've taken a number of Federation ships and they took over this Federation space station. So it's not too entailed, and most of the maps are stock maps, but at the same time, it's a very solid mission with a good story, and this author's first mission too, and it's a great first mission for him. I recommend giving it a play.
That's always nice to see a new author that sort of, swings and gets a good base hit right out of the bat.
Yeah,
I would agree. It was fun, and has that very original series, the throwback to the original series is great.
Yeah. I mean, even the space station that they use is a reuse of K7.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other one I played is, unfortunately, it wasn't as good. It was called Once and Future Queen by Nepherim. And this is also this author's first mission. And the story on this one, I did not get at first. You start out by coming in, and you have to fight off some true way, basically because you're responding to this ship's distress call. Now you get in there and basically find out that the ship has encountered a kind of temporal anomaly, and they give you this story about how a ship emerged, and a very elaborate explanation, which kind of appears to come out of nowhere, about a ship bifurcating it at trans slipstream, and that's what they called it. And somehow the ship duplicating. And so you're kind of presented
with that one Voyager episode.
Yeah, kind of.
The one
I want to say that there
was there was a duplicate and it's just slightly out of phase or something like that.
Yeah, they didn't seem to do the same thing. And once you find out what the ship was, I can see what they were trying to go for. So you're called in to track down the ship. It ends up being a Nebula-class ship, the USS Hera. And I didn't make the connection at the time. I ended up... The thing that ticked me off, that there was something off about the ship, was that you eventually board it and you meet a female LaForge. Or woman with the last name of LaForge. And I wasn't quite sure who she was at first, so I ended up looking it up, and the USS Hera is the ship that disappeared with Geordi LaForge's mother on it. And you'll remember in the episode it was mentioned Geordi LaForge is all obsessed because he thinks he's found it like within this gas giant.
Right.
And it ends up not being the ship, and just some aliens or something who are impersonating his mother.
Yeah, and didn't that episode end with them never figuring out what happened to the Hera at all?
Yeah, and it was presumed it was just destroyed. But one of the reasons he uses to support this wild theory that it somehow appeared in a gas giant is that this ship had these odd injectors, or that had injectors that had a tendency to be a little wonky or unpredictable. And so I think this particular Foundry author was trying to capitalize off of this and say that it bifurcated this temporal anomaly, caused a duplicate, and this duplicate is what you end up meeting in this mission. Unfortunately, there isn't much to the story beyond that. Once you find the ship, you board her, and you help her. You take out a couple True A, but there isn't really any connection ever established between the True A here and this appearance of the Hera. And like I said, I mean, it's pretty clear that he's definitely trying to connect it back to that episode of TNG, and it's an interesting touchstone, but I think it could be better. I mean, I think it's got some potential in there but the story really needs to be fleshed out.
Oh, great. I think we all run into that sometimes, where we think we have a really cool idea and it just needs to be fleshed out a little bit. But I think that's cool, going back to that episode and trying to figure out what happened to the Hera. I think that's cool.
What actually happened to the Hera.
If by any chance Nephirim is listening to this, keep at it. I mean, you've got a good start there, and I think, if you're working enough, you sit down and just really flush it out and try to figure out what's the conflict, how's the progression, how do I resolve it. I mean, this could be a good mission.
It's one of the things to talk about, with any mission is how storytelling works, and it's one of the things authors grow into and learn how storytelling works. And using half the time, I think, with the Foundry, honestly, the first few times that you're doing things with it, you're learning how to use the tool, and honestly kind of excited that you just figured out how to do this thing and you want to just get it published. And sometimes that focus and that, maybe a little bit of, tweaking of a story might help or whatever, and that might get lost in that excitement of, oh my goodness, I figured out how to get my idea, down and people can play it now and whatever. So, I agree, focus on things like story.
Definitely good advice.
And
all right, Mark, what did you play this week?
Just that one, actually. The one I already talked about, the space race one. Didn't really have a whole lot of time with that this week.
Well, it happens.
It does indeed.
Well, give us an opportunity to move on to our roundtable discussion topics for the week. And I want to start out with something that Kirkfat asked in the forums. He asked us to sort of think about, if we could have an asset added to the Foundry today, what would it be? And an asset could be anything from a costume to a map to an object.
Oh, really? He went from my original.
Well, he said top five. But I'm thinking, what would be the absolute one that you would want today? So I'm altering it a little. Sorry, Kirkfat, but just in the interest of time, if you guys want, you can put a top 5 on the forum post or the survey.
Sure, I'll throw my top 5 on the forum post, but and also the changing it to, if I could get one asset today, what would it be? What would be the one thing that if after I go out to Shakespeare rehearsal later, that I come back and this new asset is in the Foundry, what is the one thing there? I have to say that it would, It would have to be every. Now, does asset count as one costume, or does it count as like this entire costume set? Or, for me, what I think
it could count as whatever you want.
What I think that it really is in my personal case, it's the cryptic NPCs, and I mean all of them. I want them all.
I know you've said that you really want Captain Sean.
I want them all. I want Quinn. I want Admiral Tanay. I want Captain Sean and Commander Winters and their whole bridge crew. I want I want the EMH from the tutorial. I want Captain Brat and her entire crew from Stranded. And any NPCs. I want Slamek. I want Obasek. I want, give me all of them, because that way I can actually tell a real Riemann story that maybe builds a little bit off, even if I just want to have Obasek as a character in the background or something. Regardless,
I just can't do.
And a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them are designed in a way that we can't make them with even with the Alien creator. We can't make.
It'd be very tough.
I mean, it'd be incredibly tough.
Because, of course, Cryptic can do more things with their Alien creator than we can.
Cryptic can do tons more things than we can. But anything anything that we could make, because that's one of the things I've noticed, is that if you try to import a costume that doesn't exist somewhere in the Foundry, it just, goes back to something very standard and very regular, right? So, obviously there are some things we just can't do that just don't exist in the Foundry, like, the Breen, he's like a special, the boss that we get or whatever. We can't do things like that. That I can understand. But anything that can be created based on what we have costume-wise and character-wise, people like Quinn, like Franklin Drake, we need them. If we had them, we could tell stories. Now the issue is you asked for the one, and I can't give you just one because it's things. It really is cheating. It's cheating, but they tie completely. The other one is ship interiors, and I'll say no more. Our personal ship interiors.
Would love to have those.
Well, I can narrow that one down to one, and my choice would be the DeWitt interior.
Now, what is that one?
That is the one. It's a Federation interior. It's actually from a Klingon mission. But the best thing about the DeWitt interior that makes that particular one the best one to choose is that it has a lot of different features, like medical bays, quarters, and a shuttle bay.
Well,
all that crap that we have to build ourselves now.
Yeah.
It's literally a complete starship interior. Has the bridge, everything. You can even loot the captain's quarters.
Yeah, the DeWitt is brilliant.
Now, remind me, do you remember the name of that particular episode?
It's one of the first ones. It's one of the ones in the Federation War arc. It's no, I don't remember it.
We'll try and find it. We'll try and find it for the show notes.
Yeah, it might be second star to the left.
Second star to the right.
Second star to the right. Okay.
Yeah,
it could be
close enough.
Yep.
All right, Mark. What asset would you love to see added to the Foundry?
A water volume effect. Because as it is, water is something that you cannot add to map at all.
It's very true.
Ever. So if you want to create a giant fish tank, you can't. Something I actually wanted to do for the previous Foundry challenge, where you were doing the continuation thing, but I tried doing a workaround by doing pseudo interior map on what was actually an exterior and using an existing water source, but it didn't come out as well as I was hoping it would. Anyway, though, that's what I would like, because so you could actually put in like a pond where there wasn't one before and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. One thing I heard that Alimac 30 has done, and I haven't actually played any of his missions, so I don't know about this.
Oh, yeah.
But I had heard that he did something where he gradually, using triggers, despawning and respawning objects, I think he lowered a map into a map that already had water. He lowered his custom stuff into that to simulate it flooding. Is that right?
I played that one. Well, what it is he has a set of ruins in the water, and when you go through the triggers, it despawns and respawns the objects to make it appear as though the ruins are slowly raising out of the water.
So yeah, he's got like 5 or 6 copies.
So the opposite is actually raising out of the water.
So you're actually lowering with the room, and instead of but it makes it look like the water is rising, and then he's got an explosion that triggers to kind of cover up the fact that the room just shifted.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm thinking of a different mission, because the one I'm thinking of, the guy who wrote it. You go to this planet and you're searching for these ancient ruins, and when you find this gizmo when you monkey with the gizmo, this building complex starts to slowly rise out of the ocean.
Different mission.
Yeah, Ali Mac's mission was the mains of Balinor Moon.
That does sound really cool, though, Mark.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are the things that you could do probably more easily if you had some kind of water volume, because you could just trigger that to move instead of moving the whole set around.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be much better.
That'd be very cool. I think the asset that I most want right now is some of the building block assets from the captain's table, which, if you've never been there, it's the area for lifetime subscribers. I had never been there before a couple of weeks ago, and it's generally Federation interior, but it's different. There's some of the colors are different, some of the designs are a little bit different, and I think they would be absolutely, the walls and some of the control panels, they would be absolutely perfect for a couple missions that I have in mind, which are missions where you go back through the holodeck and do some missions with the Enterprise B and the Enterprise C. I think the coloring on those walls just makes them look absolutely perfect for that sort of Wrath of Khan era, and how everything looked back then. So
I've got to take a look
I'd
at
absolutely
there.
love to have those. All right, that was my topic. So, Greendragoon, what would you like to talk about?
Well, actually, I did have a subject I wanted to bring up, and it's a funny story. I received an in-game mail from a player called Azurian, and he said that he had heard me talking about my mission during the last show, and had gone through and played it, and in amongst saying some of the things he liked about the mission and whatnot, he asked me how I did this puzzle that I had built for the mission. And for those of you who haven't played it, it's basically you come across to this experiment that the ship crew was doing, and you have to recreate it. And there are these different steps that you have to do, and you have to do them in a certain order. And once you complete it, you kind of solve what was going on. Unfortunately, when I tried to respond to him, it said that I was blocked. Apparently, if you have it set to only accept messages from friends, it ignores everyone else. So I was not actually able to write him back and tell him, oh, this is how I did it. But I thought I would sit down and explain exactly how that works. In my particular case, I have all the steps of the puzzle assigned as talk to NPC objectives, and then I use props to actually make them look like consoles and whatnot instead of people. And one of the things you can do in a dialogue tree is hide and show button options based on triggers. So, for instance, you can have the solution to a particular step not appear until its previous step has been completed. And you can actually kind of chain this together in this manner.
Yeah, I tinkered with that a lot in my last Foundry Challenge mission, but I used it exclusively for optional dialogue, which may not have been the best use of that concept.
Yeah, and in my case, I needed to do talk to NPC objectives because that was the only way to get a failure option out of a dialogue attached to a specific object that they could retry.
Now, how do you guys feel about puzzles in general? I haven't really done any in any of my missions, and in some cases they tend to annoy me as a player. So I think I prefer. I mean, I'm not opposed to a puzzle, but I prefer if there's a way to get past it. You know, if I try it a few times and I get stumped, I like a little way to get past it. What do you guys think?
I agree. The cryptic mission where I got to fly through those rings took me forever to figure out, you know, how to fly around the sun, the one that sends you back in time. It took me forever to figure out how to control that exactly, and I loved that when I was learning how to do it, they gave me the option after failing twice, here, let us do that for you with your flight computer. There was a Foundry author who did something similar, who was like, here's a puzzle. You know, here's a big puzzle. And as soon as you had failed it once or twice, this was one of those missions I played months ago. I'd have to go back and try to figure out which one it was. But it literally was, and I failed it. I failed to figure out the puzzle twice, and one of my boffs went, I'll do that for you, sir. And the next thing I know, I was on to the next part, and I was like, excellent. I don't have to figure this out. It's not that I hate puzzles, it's that I hate getting stuck on them.
I would agree with that, yeah.
I like puzzles as long as they're not overly cerebral. I've had a couple that will present a puzzle and I'm like, what? But, I mean, I like puzzles because they allow you, or give you a way to kind of give the player something to work for the story a little bit. But you got to be careful that
isn't shooting people.
That isn't shooting people.
Which is always good, I think.
It's one of the only ways we have to present an actual challenge, like in any way that isn't just shoot this and we made this thing tougher to shoot.
I would like it to be easier to have an option to, you know, if the puzzle is making you angry, to shoot the console. The little destroyable console, you know.
Doesn't Kirkfat do a tutorial for setting up a puzzle?
Yes.
It involves shooting the console.
There's so many good tutorials, honestly. I wish I wish I had listened to more of them. And I do still, because I'm still very much learning about the Foundry.
I do dislike math puzzles.
I just dislike math.
I just open up the calculator on my other monitor here, so I cheat.
Yeah. Find the correct sequence of numbers. No.
No, I don't want to.
I'm a journalist. We're all bad at math, so.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, what would you like to talk about?
One thing I discussed with you earlier was comparing the difference between doing Foundry work and doing video game modding. Well, I have to say, doing Foundry work really isn't as tedious as some of the video game modding I've done in the past. Because with the video game modding, you don't have a graphical interface that guides you through doing stuff. You literally just type in stuff in a data file.
Coding and
yeah, you have to do the coding and figure it out.
The way you figure out whether or not you made typos is you load it and find out whether or not it actually works. I mean, with the Foundry, at least, you know, it has some built-in ability to do error checking for you.
Yeah, a lot of that behind-the-scenes stuff is done for you.
I mean, like, I did this mod for Space Empires 5 that I created the current version I created the mod over a year ago, and a few weeks ago, I found a typo that no one had noticed playing the mod in over a year. That honestly, it didn't have a huge impact on the way it worked, but you know, it was just one of those things where you look at it and you're like, huh, how did that get to stay there for so long?
Whereas that can happen with Foundry missions too. You can go through something you worked on years ago. And
while it does take a considerable amount of time and effort, it's really not as tedious as a lot of the other things I've done with video games in the past.
Yeah, it's definitely that difference between, modding that's all through third-person programs or through coding or through, getting into the guts of the program versus the developers that sort of actively support mods that have given you a version of their own editor. Like the original Neverwinter did, which is very popular. But I did some modding, very low-level stuff for things like the Total War series or Voyager Elite Force. And a lot of that was using third-party programs, things that weren't necessarily designed to be user-friendly. Things just made by other players to try and extract all these files, edit them, and then re-put them into something that would override. But the Foundry, to me, is modding made easy.
Made really easy.
Which is not to say that it is overall very easy, but it's easier.
Well, it's easy as long as you're not trying to do anything too complicated.
Which, of course, we all try to do. So.
Well, we all want to do something more complicated than the tool allows. So
I'll try to push those boundaries, and that's where things start breaking down and not working.
That's where workarounds come in, too.
We're the kings of workarounds, as I always say.
I want to do this. You can't do this. Yes, I can. I just have to figure it out.
Another way.
So it's always impressed me about the Foundry community is just their ability to get around problems and limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And their willingness to share how they did it as well.
Oh yeah.
That's the biggest thing. That the community, the ability to say, hey, I don't need to keep this trick for myself. Like, it'll help make everyone's missions better if people learn how to do this. And that's just great, If someone figures out how to do something really cool and then it gets shared, that makes everyone's missions better. and community is a big deal to me, I guess. So.
Well, I believe that makes it your turn, Hippiejohn.
Let's see, what would I like to talk about? As far as the Foundry goes, I'd like to really just, last week I mentioned at the very end that, one of the things I really would like to talk about as far as the Foundry goes is the idea of, community, and what can the idea of community help bring both to improvements for the Foundry and help bring improvements to, the game experience for everyone as a whole. In that manner, I'm going to go ahead and I'll get 3 of my 5 in the podcast before I have to go run off and read Shakespeare. I want the ability to make PvP maps. I want the ability to bring people of the 2 opposing factions, or hopefully in the future more opposing factions. I want the ability to create just a map that exists that people from both factions can come into. And along with that, obviously, I want the ability to bring more than just 5 people into a map as well. I just think that would be really valuable, and I think it would be a really amazingly valuable tool toward building community, because to me right now, one of the issues we see, and like today's announcement of the removal of fleet. You guys got me?
You're still there?
There we go. Today's announcement.
Drop your mic or something?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to get ready to leave for Shakespeare while I'm doing this too.
Course, yeah.
So, today's whole big Foundry change, it doesn't have to be a big, these people believe this or these people believe that, and, there's this community and there's that community, and, you know what, I just like making maps, honestly, sometimes, and I might not have a story going on in my head at the moment, and I might just want to sit down and make a map, and if I could sit down and just make a cool, hey, this would be a fun place for 2 sides to fight and have a war. Great, then I've just made a PvP map that the PvPers can use, and I did it because I was, not going to be doing anything else in the Foundry at the time, and I just see ways that the Foundry can benefit a lot of other communities, and like you said, and other communities can help benefit the Foundry, because quite honestly, I don't know jack about how to play this game. I can figure my way through an STF and most of the content, but you ask me how I built my ship or what my DPS is or anything like that, I don't know jack. and it's not that I don't want to know, it's that it's not my thing. It's not what I have an easy time figuring out. Or a desire to sit down and figure out necessarily right off, when instead I could be figuring out how to do a new cool thing in the Foundry. But if there are people that know these things and can present me with hey, here's a cool resource, and I see ways that the community overall can help each other out. And I want to hear more people, I want to see more people trying to bring collaborative efforts together, because more voices, speaking together sound a lot better than a single voice and then another single voice, 3 days later, and then another single voice. More voices saying, let's make these changes that benefit all of us, usually, get listened to a lot quicker. So community is what I'm all about right now.
Well, and towards that end, I put a question in the last Ask Cryptic, which the answers haven't come out yet, so we don't know if he'll talk about this one, but something like, have there been any discussions about allowing us to create PvP maps, to create social maps, to create, add a third one, STF-style group content where it's harder, where you have boss fights, things like that, where you can balance for 5 people and require 5 people.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
currently you can't put in any actual boss enemy groups in Foundry missions.
Yeah, I know.
They don't exist.
They don't exist as mobs we can place. I would love to be able to do that, and maybe have some sort of thing where if one of those mobs, if they give it to us, one of those mobs is on the map. If you place that, it becomes a mission that requires 5 people.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool solution. Like right now, if you add Borg or Breen to a map or something, hey, minimum level is 41. Here, if you add Dreadnought level or, elite boss level content, then you're saying this is 5-person content. So.
Yeah. And something like where you can designate a map as a social map, in which case you can get as many people as you want on it.
That could be fun.
But it becomes ineligible for rewards. Or something like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just trying to balance these issues out,
Well, one idea I had with the social map idea is to let those make it so that everyone who enters that map goes to the same one, regardless of whether they're teamed with any of the other people or not, or even if they know them. Because that's the whole point of the social zone, is that
it's
everyone,
just whoever, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's a great idea. Where if just whoever picks up that mission goes to the same instance.
Yeah.
No matter if you picked it up at the same time, no matter if you're on that map, that's the only map. That's the only instance of that map.
Or at least up to the cap.
I actually have to roll and go read some Shakespeare at this point.
Yeah, and we're running up against our time, so.
Yep. There's one more thing that I wanted to touch on that I wanted to say. We got the feedback the same where Kirkfat asked us to talk about which our top 5 or whatever, and I'll make a whole list we can put in the show notes for.
Yeah, everybody make a list.
But he also asked us to think about the roadmap to the Foundry, this old roadmap to Foundry updates that Cryptic put out a long time ago, apparently, or like when Foundry first came out, etc., etc. I did have a look at that this week, and I intend to continue having a look at it as I see them continuing to look toward the Foundry, and I do have comment on it, so yeah, I will either talk about that next week or...
I think that would be a great topic for next week.
Yeah, I like get everybody a chance to have a look at it. I don't know if everybody has yet, but I did. I looked at it this week, and it's a good...
I haven't looked at it for years, which is saying something. I don't think they've looked at it for years.
I don't think they have. I'm certain they haven't, so... So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for a great show. We'll be with you guys again next week. So say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Good night.
Good night.